In this tutorial, we will learn how to use a Windows form to create a small application. This is different from a console application where we can only use text. In this, we will have GUI or graphical user interface elements that allow us to work with the information in a more visual and interactive way. I'm going to go to File, New Project, and I'm choosing to use Visual Basic. I'm choosing to use the Windows desktop, and I want to have a Windows form as app. I'm going to call this BMI calculator, and I'll just put 2020 on the end here. So this is going to be something that calculates a body mass index, or BMI. And this is a measure of how your height and weight relate to each other to decide whether you're underweight or obese. You can see that the template that has been created, it doesn't have any code that we can see to start with, but we have a Windows form. And it's called Form 1, and it has the usual buttons we would expect to see. If I click on Start Now, then this code behind the scenes will be compiled, and I then have a form that I can use. So I can move Form 1 around, I can minimize it onto the taskbar, I can bring it back again, I can maximize it to fill the whole screen, I can toggle size, and I can use the edges to drag and change the size and shape of that window. Finally, I can also use the X here to close the window down. Notice that it is called Form 1. So when we're working on visual elements, we need to be aware of several things. The first is that we have a toolbox that allows us to build, and the second is that we have a properties window that allows us to change the appearance and the settings of these items. This is very much an object-oriented way of working. If you don't have the toolbox available, if you've clicked it away, you can go to View, Toolbox, and it will then appear. And you can choose to auto-hide it or pin it out. I like to have it pinned out so that we can see these tools at all times. Here is Form 1. If I go and look at the properties of it, you can see the text of that window is Form 1. And I'm going to change it to say BMI calculator. And we can see that immediately this form has changed its name. We're going to put some little widgets. These are interactive elements that we can use for the user to use the form. And we're going to put some onto here by dragging them from the toolbar. We're going to start with some labels. And labels are important. So I'm going to find these just in Common Controls. Come down here to Label. And a label can tell the user how to use your application. So I've dragged it on. It's called Label 1. And there's two things we should do. First of all, I need to change the text. And I'm going to change this to say height in meters. So height brackets M. Much more important is that I need to change the name of it. It's come on here as Label 1. And I'm going to leave it called Label. But what kind of label is it? It's a label for the height. So you should name every object when you bring it onto your form. I'm then going to just copy and paste this. So right click and copy, and then right click and paste. So you can see that you can recreate equivalents. And I'm going to line it up using the little blue lines there. I want to change this one to label weight, and I'm going to scroll down in my properties till I get to text. These are all alphabetically arranged, so T for text near the end, and I'm going to change that to weight brackets kg for kilograms. Okay, we would like the user to have some way of giving us information. Now, in a console application, it would have printed a question and we could have then just typed in on the console. Here we need something to type into, and this is why we're going to use a text box. So the text box is one of the common controls. I'm going to drag it on here, place it beside the height, and so straight away I should give it a name. Get into the habit of always naming your widgets as soon as you use them. Again, I'm going to leave it called TextBox. It makes coding much easier later on if we leave the type of widget it is as part of its name. This one is going to be called TextBox height. And then again, I can copy and paste. I'm going to Control C to copy and then Control V to paste. And if I stick that in there, it's going to be called not TextBox 1, but TextBox weight. And it has no text in it at the moment. I'm going to go and put a sensible starting value in there. And this is quite an important thing to do, because if you leave it empty, the user might then click some buttons that cause it to work with zeros. And sometimes things like dividing by 0 could cause a system crash. So a typical weight might be something like 70 kilograms. And if I have a look at that, it's not looking much like a number because it's over on the left-hand side. So I'm also going to go to text align, and I'm going to set that to right aligned. We're used to using numbers on the right-hand side, so that's a better option. I'm going to go back to height. I'm going to give that a default text of maybe 1.6 meters. And again, the text align, I'm going to set to be right. So if I click on Start to start up my form, it's got some numbers in it. I could change these. I could make that 1.8 meters. And if I press the Tab key, it will automatically jump to the next box, and I could make that 88 kilograms. So we have some use out of our form already, although it doesn't actually do anything particularly helpful to the user. They just get to collect information. So I'm going to close that down and go back to laying out some of my items. I don't really want the user to type these numbers in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here to the track bar. A track bar, and if I just drop that on beside height. So the very first thing I should probably do is go and name it track bar height. And it's a little bit short and stumpy. I'm going to fill the entire space that's available on my form following the height. Now, I'm going to set a maximum and minimum for this track bar. If I go to the minimum, what's the smallest size someone would be? Maybe 1 meter. If I go into the maximum, I'm going to set it as 2.3 meters, would be a fairly tall person. But I can't do that. The maximum and minimum for a track bar, and in fact every item has to be a whole number. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change from a minimum of, so I need to kind of change that. I'm going to change that to 230, and I'm going to change my minimum to 100. And I'm then going to come down here and say that the value is going to be 160. So you can see I've got 100 to 230, 160 is roughly in the middle of that. I need to change these here. I need to change my height from 1.6 to 160. And I need to change my height in meters to now show as centimeters. Okay, so we have now a track bar. I'm going to create something similar for the weight. So my track bar here, I will click on beside this. I will stretch it out wide, and I will immediately, having placed it on the page, call it track bar weight. I'm going to go down and set a minimum. The minimum weight for someone would probably be around 30 kilograms. and the maximum might be something like 150 kilograms. I can also set the ticks. The tick frequency is 1, and that means it goes up 1 kilogram at a time. And that's probably a reasonable thing to be doing for this. Okay, if I press run now, then you can see that I can drag these around, but it has no real impact on these text boxes. So what I need to do is to add some code that matches these up. The default handler for a trackbar is if you drag it around and change it. So I'm going to double click on this, and it takes me into a coding environment. And it says the trackbar height, when I scroll it, this is the code that should run. So what I want to happen is that the text box, now notice the IntelliSense here is going to be really helpful. I have something called text box height. And obviously that's linked up to the height scroll bar when I've got it running. So text box height dot text. So this is a property of the text box height. Text box height dot text is going to be equal to trackbar height dot value. And it's probably going to be okay with that. You might need to do a toString sometimes to convert numbers into words. Let's just test and see if that's working for me. So now I drag this, and you can see that as I'm dragging, I can go all the way down to 100, I can go all the way up to the top to 230. Wherever I drop this thumb, it then indicates a particular centimeters height. And I need to do the same kind of thing with the weight. So let me come back here to form 1, double click on our weight and do the same kind of thing. Text box weight dot text equals trackbar weight dot value. So we're assigning properties to widgets in our code. Okay, I'm going to come back here now, and what I want to have is a button that will then calculate my BMI and probably a box in which the answer will appear. I am going to stick on a button from the common tools. So click on button here, drag out something below my input section. And as usual, I'm going to go and immediately change what it's called. So this is button calc BMI. And then I'm going to come down to the text, and that's what I see on the screen. And I'm going to say, click to get your BMI. So that appears on the button for us to use. When I click the button, I want to do a calculation and show the result. So I need something to show it in. I'm going to come back and I'm going to choose another label. I'm going to drag this label on here like so. And I'm going to put in the text of that label to be 00.0, just so that I can see what it looks like. It's very small and weedy at the moment. It's going to be called label BMI. Now, normally, labels don't change when a client's using the program, because otherwise the interface gets confusing. But in this example, we will specifically make changes to the label. Before I do, I'm going to come down here to font, and I'm going to click in here, 3 dots, lets me choose some things like the size of it. I'm going to make it bold. I'm going to make it 48 point. So that's a much better display for our app. More in the next chapter.